monetize your message. We're really excited today to have joining us the wonderful Alley Lyles. Little known fact about Alley, maybe that we were actually college roommates. But Allie's gone on to do amazing things after school. She is now the CEO of Slink Interactive Media. Yes, is that, did I say that all right?
Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Which is super cool. And you're going to learn all about it today. But one of the most amazing things about Allie when I learned about what she was doing is I was super impressed by how awesome she was at taking an innovative idea that she had and like really clearly creating a message around it, built around like the benefits, the target audience, like all that kind of good stuff. And it's amazing that she was able to take this inventive idea and turn it into something that's clearly understandable, not only for those target audience members, but for investors, for other business owners, anybody else who may be interested in her product. So we're going to dig into that today and how you guys might be able to take away some knowledge around how you can take your innovative idea and clearly message it. You can learn from Allie's story and what it is she's doing. So we're just super excited to have you here. Thanks for coming, Allie.
Thanks for having me.
Yay. You bet. Awesome. So yeah, can we start a little bit with your journey? Like what has led you to this idea and to what you're doing now?
Okay, yeah, a little about me. I did go to college with Marie. Basically where I am now is I am an entrepreneur and a marketing consultant here in the Houston area. And so I fly back and forth between here and New York, but I mainly work out of my home office. And I'm working on two things right now. One of them is an app that is a news app that allows you to see all of the live streaming video across social platforms that your peers are publishing. So if there's late breaking news and you want to know what's going on, you open it up and it's attached to your Facebook Live, Instagram stories, Twitter Periscope. So it's kind of like Flipboard would be the most natural comparison. However, it's exclusively video. And it's for like a generation of people who thinks I'm tired of reading all the time. I want to see my news in a different medium. And how I came to do that and become a technology kind of marketing person here in Houston was really like, it's kind of like the conventional story you hear where people in the private sector. I had a full-time, big girl job, and I got a little burnt out, and I kind of got tired of working on other people's ideas and not really having enough time to explore my own. And so I left the private sector about a year ago. And I worked for Dell and I worked for former Mayor Bloomberg. I worked for some pretty big names, and I said, okay, I'm going to turn my side hustles into a full-time hustle. And with the intention of taking a break, of kind of exploring some of the ideas I had, and but never saying never, like that I would never come back to it. It just kind of seeing where it goes. And so that's kind of how it came to be. And I've been in this position, I would say about 13 months. I celebrated my 1 year anniversary for my gig, which was super exciting. And so now that's kind of the app, which is called News Agent, is my baby. And then I support myself by doing marketing consulting on the side, or as my full-time gig to support the app. And so that's kind of one of the things I've been writing a lot. For some reason, people are interested in the side gig economy and how you grow your own business, or how you kind of jump into your own thoughts and wishing what was. Me personally, I got tired of office sweaters and cubicles and fluorescent lights and I had all these like pet ideas when I came home, that I would work on and never felt like it was enough time. So I had a little savings and I built up a short stack of a client list. And then I went ahead and jumped forward. So that's kind of where I am right now.
That's awesome. And I'm sure it's so relatable for so many different people who have gone through similar journeys. You know, that whole cubicle lifestyle really, I think for a lot of people leads to burnout and leads to this idea of, okay, but I liked what you said earlier about working on your own projects and your own ideas rather than working for someone else and to make someone else's ideas a reality.
Yes. I'm fixing my camera.
Oh, no worries.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, it didn't come easily, like, right. It didn't come without trial. Mm-hmm. I think that like the first, you know, I mean, if I'm going to be candid, I thought, okay, like I'm the best. I do really well at marketing. I can totally float my own business. And, that's not the case. Because if you're good at marketing, I'm also like super type A, so I'm good at operations. But I think that one of the things that I crashed almost immediately at was the work-life balance. Like that was out the window. I was working like 60 hours a week because I kept telling myself like, oh, I have to, you know, work really hard to make this happen. But really was burning the candle at both ends because I was running myself ragged. And then like as a marketing consultant, people are like, well, what's your specialization? And, you know, I do know SEO and PPC and all those things, but I mean, to be quite honest, those things can get kind of boring after a while. You know, those are like the things you have to know, but I really do content development. And so I noticed that like the copy and some of the wireframes I was doing for websites were becoming less quality just because I was tired, you know, and so I think that once I started to like run more and eat like real food and not just mac and cheese, that was the personal part that I think I wish someone would have told me, you know, when so not so much the business plan and stuff, that to me, strangely enough, came easily. It was the, hey, here, take care of yourself and go to the park and go see the sun part that like got for me. But yeah, but believe it or not, that affects your content.
Yeah, no, it super does. You're right. I'm really glad you said that because I've definitely felt the same way at times. And you're right, like the work suffers. And sometimes I think for those of us who are just a little bit type A, like, like that's like the motivation, right? The motivation isn't like, so that I can be human. Like the motivation is like, so my clients are happy and I finish things on time with my deadlines. So, you know, like whatever it takes, I guess, there probably should be some more selfish motivation in there, like to feel human. Yeah, to get some vitamin D and like see the sun. But yeah, I think it's super common. I think especially if you feel like, okay, I have X amount of savings and like I need to be baking this at this point in order to like not be scrounging for food or like whatever it is. So yeah, there's a lot of pressure. It's a lot of pressure. And so I think that means more than any other time, we have to be gentle with ourselves and good to ourselves. But it's like the first thing we don't do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that for someone who, and what I would say, and you know, we're talking about monetizing our message and we're kind of talking about the mushy gushy of it. It's the mushy gushy personally that I wish someone would have told me. And I think that their entrepreneurship is very lonely. Even if you're working with a partner or something like that, it's something that like, you know, there are times where at 2 a.m. at night when I was trying to, you know, finish a prototype, no one else was around, you know, and so you have to learn how to deal with that. And I think that, you know, I was reading this article, something like 14% of Americans, it was in CNN Money, like about, I think the article was published about a year or two ago, but that 14% of Americans are entrepreneurs. Like they take that leap. But I wonder like how many of them were, I think we can all be like financially prepared. We can all have the toolkit. We can go to lynda.com and learn about Google AdWords. It's fine. But for some reason, there's like a certain amount of embarrassment or like stigma around like this personal thing. Whether you're single or whether you're married and your spouse has to deal with you and that and I mean that with all the love in the world because someone is putting up with you at the end of the day. And so, but what I found was when I I kind of, when I opened the business, like at the end of August of last year, I was kind of petering along, and then, trying to ramp up and sustain things by myself, and work with vendors and do whatever it was to get the product out. I think what was very isolating, and what I should have known, was being a tech content marketer. You spend a lot of time with people behind computers. So they're behind their computers coding in, I don't know, the Bay, and I'm behind my computer, doing layouts in Houston. And so that's also like a further way of isolating yourself. And so it's not like you're going into a co-working space, you're telecommuting, but it's not like you're a small business and you're running a Etsy shop and you're building quilts or widgets or whatever with the person next to you. Technology can be very isolating. And when I noticed that it was, and I think the breaking point for me wasn't so much like personally, like losing sleep and coffee and stuff. It was when I noticed that my product was not doing very well. It was suffering. And I was like, okay, well, why is this? And then it's like, oh, it's because I keep staring at the same thing and not catching old mistakes or something like that. So, I think when it comes that, I don't know, if I had to look back on my work anniversary, or my ownership anniversary, I would say that the personal thing, the personal aspect of it, knowing when to give something off to a vendor and when you should maintain your sanity is probably the biggest lesson I've learned, and has affected how I express ideas, and how I work on not only the app, but like the side projects that I have going on, and what I choose to take on and not take on.
And that's so interesting to me, that isolation bit too, because when we're looking at messaging and we're looking at how to message a product or a service or really anything in your business, the heart and soul of messaging is connection, right? So you have this dichotomy of like, I'm feeling really isolated, but my messaging needs to connect and needs to cultivate connection, and, trying to figure that out. And I can see how when you are feeling isolated, it can start to influence your messaging in a negative way and be kind of a indicator like, okay, well, maybe I do need to step back and take care of myself so I can make those connections.
Yeah,
no, exactly.
Connections matter on a lot of levels too, right? It's not just like you speaking with your target audience and the folks that you want to be using your app, but it's also like you connecting with peers or like other business owners in completely different industries or fields. Like this conversation here, like it's amazing to me how much of like what you're saying about your experience with like a totally different kind of product totally mirrors our experience, like being able to have those conversations, like, look, it's not just me. Like that's really awesome.
Yeah. And sometimes when I talk to people about this, like one of my kind of side hustles, or when I mentor, or when I blog for publications, it's like it really is this topic, the emotional side of entrepreneurship and maintaining sanity, especially for women, since we're overwhelmingly always the bearer of more of the burden, and which is statistics. It's not just perception.
You're like science kids.
Science, yeah. But one of the things that it was really kind of funny anecdote. I was people are like, well, how do I know if I'm burning out? Like how do I know, if my content is suffering, my business is suffering? And one of the things I did was I was showing my mom, and my mom I consider to be very, like, just got an iPhone like maybe 2 years ago, only uses Facebook app, like not very social media savvy. Perfect petri dish for me. Because when I'm talking, wonderful woman, I love her, but like when I'm talking tech jargon, and when I need so map, okay, think of your basic app, right? There are the tech savvy people who are going to get it. They're going to open up the app. They're going to know exactly, where to click where, how to enable push notifications and stuff like that. And then there are people in this other pile, your other kind of target audience who you hope to influence, that are like my mom, who, when I showed her my prototype, was like, one time I was tired and I was working on a prototype, and I showed it to her, and I had it on my phone, and she was just going through. She's like, "What's the name of this app?" And I was like, "What do you mean? Duh." And she was like, "I don't know what the name of the app is." And I was like, "Oh." And I realized I was so tired that I didn't put the logo in the masthead. Like I didn't put it, build. I not know your field from anything can be so helpful. And I actually don't recommend a family. That's something that's been really, really helpful for me.
I think the sound was cutting out just a little bit on my end. Was it cutting out on yours, guys?
Yeah, just a little bit. But yeah, I love that story about your mom and how she's such a good example of those kind of two different types of audiences. Because when you have especially a product that deals with technology, there really is a wide range of, usability concerns, essentially, because you do have those super tech savvy people, and then the people who are like, what is this smartphone thing? I just picked one up for the first time, but I want to make it work for me. I want to use it for useful things. I don't want it to just be a extra large cell phone. So
yeah,
I think that's great that you have that, first of all, that kind of person to go to kind of be like, here, look at this. And I also think it's interesting how sometimes there are things that are so obvious that slip under our radar because we get so caught up in our own details and our own messaging details sometimes. And it's like, oh yeah, that's totally an obvious thing that normally would not slip by, but it's also something that's so obvious that we're not thinking about it all the time.
Exactly. And so I encourage everyone to do that. But one thing I actually should mention, and sometimes I just get kind of caught up in my own story that I forget about it, is that as a marketer, I have no tech experience. So what I mean by that is I walk into tech companies like Dell or Mutual Mobile or something like that, and I simply write content and market. But I don't know code very well. And so as content marketers, one of the things that I encourage people to do when you're talking about messaging or developing a product is just hack your way through it. My app was actually done without a lick of code. I teach a class at Station Houston, which is an incubator in town, and it's called Product Development Without Code. And it's apps without code. There are websites out there like Bubble, where you just simply like drop in little boxes and create wireframes, and you click on this button and say, I want it to, shimmer across the page and shimmer within the app, and then it'll do so. And so I teach people to hack and to code with to take
Oh, I think we're losing you again. Hold on one second.
Sorry. Hey, Allie. It's totally not your fault. It's hang on. let me move you back into the lobby. I was just refreshing.
Perfect.
Okay, we need a little stand by.
She's got this down though. So for those of you watching, Be Live is still a little hiccupy from time to time with sound. So we're just going to have Allie refresh, and then she'll be back in, and we'll continue talking about everything monetizing your message, and specifically Allie's experience with her app that she's developing, which sounds really cool.
And also, I'm gonna have to check out this Bubble thing.
Right?
I can make an app. That's like amazing.
I'm like, where do I go? I need to go there right now.
Okay, I can hear you.
See me now?
Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. Go on.
No. Yeah. So my kind of little story about Bubble and mobile apps is, and what it has to do with messaging is the fact that, don't wait to learn something. When I learned I couldn't, when I found out I couldn't learn Swift, which is the Apple coding, I was like, well, let me figure out how else I can do this, because I was just interested in getting from A to Z, from one end to another. Because for any project that I've started, like the first iteration of News Agent or One Click Relief, which is a website I'll talk about in a little bit, really came from a skeleton. You know, when you open up Uber or Tinder or whatever it is, it did not look like that the first time around. You know, it looked like there's these old like graphics from like Time Hop where Facebook was like a man's face, and like, you know, like, so you have to start from somewhere. So I'm not a fan of like, I don't have time for Swift.
Yeah.
I love that.
Stuff like that. So what I do is like, or I've encouraged like a client, a good friend of mine who was interested in building a website. She does cakes, like artisan cakes out of her own like kitchen and fondant and all that stuff. And she was like, well, I want someone to build me a website, but I mean, I don't really know. And so I said, you know what you do? You take a magazine and you just cut letters and you cut pictures and you glue it on a piece of paper and you scan it and you mail it to someone. Because, you know, you email it because essentially like you just need to get to that first thought and then you can grow.
Yeah.
You know, and it takes too much time till I don't have time to learn how to code, but because when you're your own business owner and you own your own entrepreneur, there are only so many hours in the day. Well, even as a human being, there are only so many hours in the day. So where are you going to cut? I don't really, I mean, I love people who code. I think they're great. There's nothing against them. But I'm a marketer at heart. And so I just need to like scoot past this one bit so I can get to what I really want to do. And so that's how, I mean, I encourage people to start small. And I think that people are like, well, it's not a good time, or it's not the way it wants, you know, I want it to look, it's never going to be that time, you know?
Just
and
start.
I think that if you have to start someplace. And in terms of like market feasibility, like, when you put a message out there, like, even if you start small, at least it gives you an opportunity to get feedback so you can tweak it along the way. But if you wait till like the big release, then it's a little too late. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, has that been your experience in terms of like product development? Like just a way to kind of get an idea down, just one idea?
Yeah. And, you know, I think it's so interesting too, because, you know, you were talking about being type A before, and, you know, Marie and I can totally relate to that, but that becomes so hard, right? When you're a lot of times a type A person, you want it to be perfect before you put it out to the world. And that's actually not the best way to get your message out there, because you're not letting it evolve naturally through user feedback and through the natural hiccups that happen when you're releasing something. I mean, just look at Be Live, what we're using right now. There are definitely still hiccups that we're experiencing today. But if we didn't have it, we wouldn't be having this interview right now. Right. Hiccups included. So, you know, they had to put something out, right?
For sure. And the other thing that's like coming to mind for me, and I was like looking for the book here, but it's actually like right by my bed, which shows you that I think it's important, is that book, Show Your Work. And I think it's a really nice way to
Austin Kleon?
Yeah. Like it's such a nice way to like be type A, but also like be human and like show your progress and like involve other people in the journey. And like,
because we all know type A people are not human.
I think we're not. You know, like, you know, perfectionistic tendencies, whatever. But like, yeah, we're definitely, we've definitely experienced that. Like our course that we launched initially, like the number of iterations that's gone through, and we're actually planning another iteration of it, is like quite a lot. But we never would have made those iterations or made them in the way that we have, like with the user feedback that we've gotten, like unless we put it out there and like, you know, gotten some beta users and then gotten like a first generation of users on it. And I think it totally works. It's not just like for folks in the tech industry at all. Like this is definitely for anybody who owns a business in any capacity. Just ship it, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And one thing I also kind of talk about when when I mentor people who are like small business owners, or a small business owner came up to me, and he had this, him and his 3 friends, it was 3 buddies, mowed lawns. And so what they wanted, and was an app that would basically allow a person interested in getting their lawn mowed to schedule time for one of the 3 of them to come mow the lawn. Mm. And so he was like, well, he was like stressing about it, which of course it is, it was his baby, it was this idea, that I was like, and I didn't say it in a condescending way. I was like, your app doesn't have to look super slick. It doesn't have to look super glossy. It doesn't have to have like push notifications. Really, at its bare bones, it needs to look like something that would help someone real quick. Yeah. So I think when you're thinking about like iterations and you're going through these ideation processes, like I think you have to think of the end goal. And the app was by no meeans gorgeous, it wasn't colorful or whatever, but it got the job done, and for him, it was actually, he didn't want it to look beautiful and to look like, a glossy app, because he really didn't have time for that. He was trying to grow a business and really was more interested in functionality. So to him, his final app was amazing. And I think that that's the process, and I think there's a lot that kind of comes into like how, you get your messaging across. And one thing that I'll talk about is a website called One Click Relief. And so this was no secret that a week ago, Houston, where I live, was hit by Hurricane Harvey. And so a bunch of people, there's been an amazing outreach in the community amongst FEMA and government agencies, and an outpouring of love and donations internationally. And so one of the, a group of people got together here in Houston with Station Houston, which is Incubator I'm a part of, and civic activists, which are people who take data, city data, and repurpose it so it's part of a tool to help a city. And so a bunch of us, including myself, got together and we're like, well, we don't know how to, help, rebuild houses or anything, but we can code and we know technology. And so what One Click Relief is a website that allows people to.
No, it's doing it again.
Huh?
Oh, wait, there we go. Now it's going. Okay, I heard what One Click Relief is a website that allows people to.
Ta-da! It's a website that allows people to find out what is needed. So there's a drop-down bar. It says diapers or baby supplies or air mattresses or something like that. Where, so it'll tell you what shelter it's needed at, like Presbyterian Church on Meyerland side of town or something like that. And you can click $10, $20, or $30. And so let's say you click $20, it takes you to your Amazon cart, and you can get it auto shipped, those supplies, to that place. And so it's a very like bare site, but it's one of those things that it was built by a couple of us in 3 days. And it's really helpful because, especially for people outside of Houston who don't really know the context of like shelters or what's needed or what's where or anything like that, a woman standing in our kitchen in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, can see that diapers are needed at this church, and one click and prime the supplies over to the church in Houston. But that's an example. I mean, I'm not talking about like monetizing a message so much, but when we're talking about like content ideation, we knew going in that website was going to be super bare, but we were really invested in the back end work and kind of the API data pools, so we can get all the needs and the Amazon connected together. But by no means is it supposed to be gorgeous. It's just supposed to function, and it came out really well. And it's being used and hopefully will be repurposed for Hurricane Irma. That's the plan right now. So I think when you're thinking about content and messaging, I think that sometimes it can be a little overwhelming to a small business owner, because you're they have no idea, you know, when you're kind of walking into it, you're thinking about Facebook and like all the giants and what their stuff looks like. And without a sense, and there's a lot of pressure to make it look like that, without a sense of like, hey dude, it doesn't need to be like that. Like just make it work. And so I wish that was something that was apparent more to people, to entrepreneurs. I don't know. It's just perception and probably mass marketing. I'm not sure, but I wish people could see things as that small things are okay. And that nothing has to be perfect in order for something to be successful.
Right. And actually, we were just talking, we have a Facebook ads manager, and she was like, guys, you know, ugly landing pages actually convert better than like beautiful landing pages with sparkles and like pictures everywhere and all this stuff. Like, just keep it simple. And I think that's true for a lot of things. It's about the value at the end of the day and like what it is that someone's getting out of it. And actually, like there's an app that I keep thinking about in this context. It was this outdoors, like it was like Instagram, but for like outdoorsy people. And the problem was like they basically were basing everything around just like community, right? So there were like, you know, videos and photos of people like hiking or, you know, rock climbing or whatever. And it was all based around this like free community. And they started trying to monetize it. I mean, they would put a lot of pressure on making it look just as beautiful as something like Instagram. And they started monetizing it, and there was like this crazy uproar in the community. Not that people were crazy, but it felt really at odds to this like free community that they've been creating, I guess, to people. Like it felt like it was a surprise. And it wasn't long at all before they went under. They had to get bought out. I'm not sure, not that that's necessarily a failure, but I don't think it was their original plan. You know, like they wanted to grow this big community and keep working on it. I don't think that getting bought out, at least in that stage, was part of their plans, because they all just seemed really heartbroken about it. And I think just like thinking, you know, well, if we had maybe instead like just thought about our messaging in the first place, so that like when we had ads on here and because they actually had some really clever ads, like that film, The Revenant, that came out, and it was like outdoorsy. And so they had like this like,
oh my God.
Yes, that was like acting like whatever the character was in that. Like it was actually kind of clever and cool, but like people were pissed. So like if they just thought about the messaging from the beginning and like made it feel like it wasn't so jarring to have those kinds of like messages or to have ads integrated from the beginning, they'd probably still be doing fine right now. So, but instead, you know, they were focused on community building and making it look pretty. And those were the two things. And like, that just wasn't enough to float it. And it's sad, but you know, I think it's important, you know, to set people's expectations and, you know, just to have the content there be something that is worthwhile to people, even if you do monetize. Because people expect businesses to make money. That's what they expect. It's fine.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think there's something to be said. I haven't heard of the app you were talking about. Now I want to find out more about it.
I'll tell you later.
Yeah. I think that there's something to be said about authenticity, because that's probably.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it again.
Dive and their followers was they were featuring a lot of like Shutterstocky looking photography, and so for people, for buyers, that just didn't resonate, because they're just like, they didn't see themselves in that. That was like a model-esque type person. It was, things are too perfect. And then lo and behold, when you have a market where something is wanted and not there, a startup started. And I forget the name of the startup, but it's a couple of launched since then, where really they're like the Shutterstock of independent, more natural looking photography. And so when people want to be seen, like, so it looks like iPhone type photos, they're really nice quality, they're a nice shot. But a lot of businesses are basically using these photos and in their photography, and it was part of their branding campaigns. and in the photography is getting the photographer, excuse me, is getting attribution. So that's become a thing, which I think is interesting now. And then also, I think in terms of content, and in the same vein, authenticity is video. You know, some of the most popular YouTube stars, and at least I follow makeup because I'm a makeup geek, but you know, our tutorials that are taken just from like a point and shoot type camera like we're doing right now, you know, where women are just putting on their eyelashes or falsies or whatever it is. And those sort of video tutorials where a woman is just in her boudoir or whatever doing her makeup convert more than I don't know, you know, celebrity makeup stylist
produced.
Yeah, exactly. Because part of it is that women, you know, who kind of reverting back to ugly landing pages, but only because it's kind of like a revolt, like enough perfection. I don't want to be
totally.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool.
So all the more reason, right, to just like whatever your product is, whatever your business is based around, just start, you know, it's like, be yourself, just start, warts and all, it's fine. Like people expect that it'll grow.
Yeah. And that doesn't necessarily mean be sloppy. It just means allow yourself to be imperfect and allow yourself to go through these iterations and these processes, knowing that it's not going to be, you know, at the start what it might be a few months or years down the road. And that's okay. You know, it's fine because we are growing as entrepreneurs too. We are changing, and what our business needs are changing, and even what our audience looks like is changing. All of this evolves over time. So there's no reason to have this perfect product or perfect service right at the get-go when what's perfect for you now might not be what's perfect for you in a year.
Yeah. No. Hang on a sec, Allie. I'm going to put you down in the lobby real quick. It's like cutting you out again. I'm going to put you in the lobby and then bring you back up. Okay, let's try that. Yeah, it's working.
Awesome.
I don't know why it's picking on you. I'm really sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm sorry. I guess that what I learned that lesson the hard way, that it's okay to kind of have different iterations and not be perfect. It kind of like that, you know, the high school kid on the first day of high school, like where you're like walking to the cafeteria and you're trying to figure out where to sit. Like it's once you realize you're sitting with entrepreneurs who are also going through these little ideation process, it's like a support group almost. You know, when you talk to one of the people I reached out to when I started my business was actually Marie, because I knew she had started her business and your business, and so when I talk, the more and more I talk to people kind of doing their own thing and realize that we're all, you know, in this constant movement process, the more like I felt normal. And I think, but until you jump into that pool, you kind of socialize and become part of that world, then you're forever stuck in here that, oh, my perfect thing, you know, my app has to look perfect. But it's really nice waters out here. You know, like I think people for the most part are very supporting and supportive, and especially if they've been through the same process themselves. They see themselves there, and I think it's kind of like pulling behind like the curtain of Oz. It's like, oh man, this magic show is just a bunch of people tinkering away like forever and ever, you know. So that's kind of what it felt like. So I think there's a difference between perception when you start and then when you finally jump in and you're like, oh, okay, well, it's not so bad, you know, this is really what it is. So
yeah, definitely love it. Yeah, and I think you're right. Like I always kind of this perception that like if I had my own business, it would be cutthroat and like I would be subjected to that kind of environment because that's what you always hear, right? Like to be good at sales and marketing, you have to like just not care, just like go for the sale. But I don't know if it's just like our little neck of the entrepreneurial woods or what, but I really think you're right that like the waters are gentler than I expected, and that there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of um, commiseration at times, and there's a lot of celebration of each other, and there's room for all of us at the table. And that's probably been, one of my most pleasant surprises too. And honestly, our business was pretty stagnant until we found that community, until we found a coach that we loved. We found, other entrepreneurs through mastermind programs. We created our own community, started reaching out and made our clients kind of feel more like part of a family, instead of just like, you're a one-off client, you don't know each other, have anything in common with each other. Like that was definitely our initial take. But, it's huge, like what you can do when you bring people together on a lot of levels. And it's huge too, what it can do for your business and for you as like a business owner to feel like not alone and supported. And like, also you have that data, right? You can move forward in a way that makes sense because you actually started something, and now you can continue getting more and more strategic as you go.
Yeah, no, I definitely understand. And as you were talking, I was thinking about like the community, and I was trying to think back to why maybe I didn't join the community. And I forget that there's this perception, because it feels like it's been like ages ago, but this perception that someone's going to steal my idea.
Yeah.
As a consultant in marketing, we have that all the time. That someone's going to steal our copy, someone's going to steal whatever it was that we were working on for that content piece. And then when I went into the apps arena, I was worried, someone's going to steal my app idea. And then someone told me, probably one of the best things I've ever heard in my life was, if someone takes your idea, it probably, if no one wants to buy your app, it probably wasn't worth buying. Or if no one's ever had your idea before, it's probably not worth having. And she didn't say that to be rude or anything, but everyone's going to have that idea. It's not a novel idea to read news via videos, or to do like football marketing in VR, which is another project I've done, the virtual reality. And but it's like how you do it. And so being able to make it unique and tell it in a different way is different. And so that's why I was like, oh my God, yeah, it feels like ages ago. That's why I think people don't do it. And the thing is like, you just have to shamelessly promote yourself. And that's something that was hard for me, because as an introvert, like I'm not used to that. And it was just like swallowing like Pepto-Bismol. You just gotta do it, you want to feel better.
And now you're two-time 40 under 40 nominee, and like all this amazing stuff. You're a CEO. Like, look what's possible, right? When you like just get out there.
It's weird. It's still weird to me. I can honestly say like I do things because I'm passionate about them. But when I hear like myself being introduced at some place at an event, and they see all the things I've done, it's like, oh wow, I've done all those things. And so it's something that like it's something that like I really wish I was better in talking. And that's one of the things. I went to this women's conference at Rice University. It's our alma mater, and I introduced myself. I said, "Hey, my name's Alley Lyles. I'm a media consultant." And then I asked the question. It was like after the lecture. It was a Q&A. And then the lady was like, "What do you do?" Because it was a thing for entrepreneurs. And then I like very meekly described my app. Like it was just like, well, it's the app, and I just shot myself in the foot, because she was like, yeah, see, and then she like pulled me aside later and was like, you need to, get a little bit more gusto. And I was like, it wasn't that I was like embarrassed or like anything like that. It was just like this thing that it was basically my baby, and I was afraid that if I talked about it, someone was gonna like say something they don't like about it, So there was one thing, and then another thing was just having the sheer confidence and just being able to just put it out there and say, hey dude, this is what I'm working on. And that was hard.
Yeah, it is. I think
simply talking about it.
One thing that's helped me, because I've definitely experienced that sensation before too, is like, and I'm by no means like an expert at this, but I think just like thinking of it as like, I'm opening a door for you. Like you wouldn't want to be like, I'm going to just crack it open. Like you just want to be like, here's the door, it's open. Like, do you want to talk about this? Because I think otherwise, yeah, it does become like a mixed message, or it becomes converted into like people not being sure if you're sure of what you're doing, or there's all sorts of like stuff that is already out of your control in that moment. And like for those of us who do love control, like one of the things we can control is like our own expression of what it is we're doing, and just like being like confident in the fact, I mean, gosh, there's so many people who need what you're doing, like who would love that, right? Like to not have to go through all the different apps and like being able to see everything in one place. There's so many people who need what each one of us is doing, or at least want it, and it would benefit their lives greatly. And so just assuming that everybody we meet is one of those people, right? Like if it's all the way from someone who's super tech savvy all the way to your mom who's like, where's the home button or whatever, like, you know, that's awesome. That means everyone's a potential client or a potential customer. Oh gosh, it's muted again. Why? Why? Hang on. Wait, say something like Allie.
Hi.
Okay, there we go. Okay, I couldn't hear anything you said this last time after I finally stopped yammering on.
Yeah. Well, like, I think one thing I'll say for like anyone who's interested in being an extroverted introvert or whatever it was, and kind of making that leap, because that was huge for me, is
it chooses the worst times to cut out.
I can't even. You're like, it's happening together.
The secret to life is.
Yeah, that's basically what just happened. No, this is not great. Sorry, everybody.
I really liked what she said though about those two things. Like the one that it's your baby and it's so hard to like unveil your baby to the masses.
True.
And then the other that it's about having the confidence. Like I think those two are huge when it comes to monetizing your message, because you have to be willing to be vulnerable and you have to be willing to be confident. And both of those things don't necessarily come naturally when you're talking about something that you poured your heart and soul into.
Right. So the secret to introverted extroversion is.
I agree.
Let's see. Can you hear us, Allie? Uh-oh. Can you hear us?
Now it's gone the other way.
Okay, I'm going to move her to the lobby real quick. Okay, there we go. Now she's moving in the lobby. Hi. No.
Hi.
Oh, wait, yes, yes. Okay, say something. Yeah, I think you're good now.
Okay, so what I was saying.
Why are you so rudely interrupted?
Suspense is killing us.
Okay. So one of the things that I'll say is what kind of got me out of that was the word networking is really weird. It kind of reminds me of Martin Sheen, or what's his face, Michael Douglas in Wall Street, like the kind of the pinstripe suit,
icky, yeah,
hair and stuff like that. That was weird. The more I realized that I thought about it, people like geeking out with other entrepreneurs or hanging out like the more my clientele base actually grew, because what I considered it, because I didn't think about it as, hey, I'm networking with them. It was really like as an undergrad, I studied sociology. It was a sociological like need to figure out what their problem was and what was causing their problem and what could make their problem better. And the more you kind of think about it, you think of yourself as a problem solver and really wanting to help people, that that in your mind makes like networking or whatever. It's funny because I was in the Galleria area of Houston, like, in a huge, tall, like I think it was 34 building, 30 stories tall. And I got up at we walked in, and she had like a brochure, a business plan. Like I could see like a chart and all this stuff. And I said, "Oh, what is it that you're working on?" And then like by the time that we got down to the lobby, she handed me her business card and asked me to come in and help her with the marketing plan. She told me she'd pay me. Because it was just really like and I cannot make that. I would not make that up. She would tell you that happened, and I'll give you her name.
I know you.
But it was one of those things where like I was not looking for a sale. I mean, obviously having clients is nice, but it had to do with sustainable oil and gas in the North American market, and we just talked. And so I accidentally kind of came into something that way. And I know that sounds really simple, but when I thought about just like looking at problems I wanted to help solve, instead of like giving my contact number, maybe we'll go out to like a glass of wine or coffee or whatever it is people do, then the easier it was on me mentally to be able to accept it and behave accordingly and not feel like really squeezed out. But I made it a thing to at least here in Houston be part of Station Houston. So that's one thing I recommend for people who, even if you're not in Houston, is to join like one club or a coffee thing. Because one is doable, 5 is a bit much, but because one you can actually maintain one, and you get to know people. Because after I moved back from Chicago, before I started my business, I came back to Houston, and then even though I'm from Houston, I hadn't lived here in like 10 years ish, and so it was a good way for me to reintegrate in my community. Because when I left, tech was non-existent, and now it's booming. But I didn't know how to reinsert myself. And as a solopreneur, there really would have been not a better, more effective way than to do that, because I'm behind my computer in my home office, or I'm at a client's, and so having one place to go kind of forces you to get to know people. And guess what? People who need help go to people who know things. And so, boom, that's how you get clients.
Secrets revealed. I love it. Man, there's been so many good topics today. I mean, we've talked about connection, the power of that. We've talked about the power of just like being yourself, being vulnerable, just like shipping, just like doing it and trusting that like just starting is going to be powerful. The power of connecting with people who are your peers, but as well as connecting with people who are your potential clients and I love what you said, Allie, about just like treating it as just like geeking out over what you love, because that's the way to do marketing and networking in a way that doesn't feel gross. So much good stuff, like amazing wisdom. I just have loved this conversation, even with all the stupid tech glitches.
I've had a fun time. Thanks for having me, ladies.
Thank you so much for joining us.
So if anybody wants to learn more or get in touch with you, what are the best ways for them to do that?
Get in touch with me?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sorry, you cut out there.
Sorry.
You can email me. No, it's okay. No worries. You can email me at Alley, ALLEY, at Slink, SLINK, Interactive, INTERACTIVE. Or at Twitter, on Twitter.
Awesome. It kind of cut out there at the end, but I'm going to message you right after this is over. We're going to put information into the screen so that people can see it if they want to get in touch with you and learn more and continue connecting. But thank you so much for your time today, Allie, and thanks for bearing with the tech troubles.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good one.